Good morning to you all. As I said, my name is Usha Reddy, and I'm currently a consultant in ICT4D development. My experience has started with using flip charts and slides, to overhead projectors, to radio, to television, to multimedia, and now on to today's ICTs. I have worked mostly, despite my education in the US, I came back, found that I had to unlearn everything I knew about development, and came back to India where I worked throughout most of my career. I'm a social scientist with a background in communications and psychology, and so I'm both a practitioner, teacher, or whatever it is. But I'm not here to talk about myself. I have been tasked and mandated by the UN Asian and Pacific Training Center for Information and Communication Technology for Development to share with you the work that IPID has been doing over nearly in the area of ICT, human capacity building for development. So on behalf of Dr. Usha, the director of ICT, on behalf of all the team at Incheon, South Korea, on behalf of all the 10 consultants who, like me, work for her to develop the materials and to develop the field in the use of ICT for development. So I speak on behalf of all of them. There is a presentation which Dr. Ree sent to me, which I will go through quickly, hopefully quickly. It's a long presentation, but it needs to be shared, and it's on the desktop should any one of you want to take a copy of it. It's quite extensive. And so I'll begin by presenting that, and wherever possible I will share insights from what we have learned in the Asia Pacific. We meaning this team of consultants and ICT who will be going around through Asia Pacific in order to provide this capacity building. So we share with you whatever we have learned in different settings, and there's some very, very interesting learnings. Let me begin by saying that millions of dollars are spent every year in ICT for development projects. However, the success rate, or the failure rate I should say, is around 70 to 80%. Why do 70 to 80% of projects in ICT for development not succeed? According to a senior Government of India official on a public platform, he said 80% fail, 10 to 15% are partial success, and 5% succeed. Now this is an appalling figure, it's frightening. And when you look at the reasons why these projects are not succeeding, there are many. But to a large extent, it is because of the failure of capacity building, planning, strategizing, implementing, and managing. So let me take you through what we have done at ICT. I am not an employee of ICT, but I speak for the agency because I worked with them on these for the last 8 to 9 years. Let me begin again, it's somewhat repetitive to all of you in this room, but we place ourselves in a broader context of development where the focus on economic development has shifted to a focus on human development in the last 20 years, where human development are measured not by indicators of GDP, but by indicators of education, health, and life expectancy. There is also, especially, and I'm sure it's in other regions, but in the Asia Pacific region, a very uneven level of development of different countries. You find in Asia Pacific powerhouses like Singapore. You find in Asia Pacific political powerhouses like India and China with great internal disparities. And you also find some of the most or the least developed countries listed according to the HDR, whether it's Nepal or Bangladesh or somewhere else in this region. So we have this great unevenness of levels of development. And what we have found is that despite all the efforts in development aid done by a huge number of agencies, there are growing disparities despite these decades. Growing disparities between the rich and the poor, between the richer countries and the poorer now. Through all of this, there has been a shift currently from what we call the Millennium Development Goals of the year 2000 and as we approach 2015 to what we say SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals. Experience has taught us, and experience with what we call legacy media and with other media has taught us over the last 50, 60 years that definitely technology or ICTs have a role to play as enablers of development, as tools, not necessarily per se because they're transformative in nature. And this enabling tool is basically in terms of providing efficiency and effectiveness and transparency of operations. And today, ICTs are no longer seen as something, a luxury that a poor country cannot afford because of issues of poverty, but as critical infrastructure which will enable these poor countries perhaps to leapfrog and reach out into today's knowledge society. And if you go back to the year 2000 and the MDGs, the role of ICTs is recognized in Goal 8, Target 18. Following the MDGs, we also had the World Summit on Information Society, Geneva 2003 and Tunis 2005, said each person should have the opportunity to acquire the necessary skills. I won't repeat the whole quotation. It says there is a need for international and regional cooperation in the field of capacity building. Resulting from this, the IPID, it's a very long name and we have to breathe and inhale once in the middle before we say the whole name, was created by UN Economic Commission for Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, which is one of the large regional agencies of the UN system, and APCICT in itself is a regional institute of ESCAP, and I think there are two other regional institutes that ESCAP has. It was established in June 2006, and it is located in the Republic of Korea, South Korea, with a large chunk of its funding coming from the Republic of Korea. The way that APCICT has framed its mission in terms of using ICTs for social and economic development is based on three large pillars. These pillars consist of number 1, training, 2, resource and knowledge sharing, and 3, advisory services. And in the first few years, APCICT, the agency, focused on training. It has also now moved into research, knowledge sharing, and advisory. There are 3 flagship programs in APCICT. The first of these, which was developed in 2008, consists of what is known as the Academy of ICT Essentials for Government Leaders. This emerged out of the question as, who are the people we need to train? What are their training needs? And how do we go about capacity building these people? Essentially, the agency was mandated as looking at senior and middle level government officials in different countries. This poses a big problem. How do you, in the 63 countries of the Asia Pacific, address the needs of these middle and senior level government officials in the area of ICT? So the developing government official and policymakers' capacity for leveraging ICTs for social economic development, leaving aside all the hype that was associated with the technology. To do this, and with the purpose to equip government leaders with essential knowledge, the Academy of what is now 11 modules. So in order to do the capacity building, the training materials had to be developed. And the training materials now consist currently of 11 modules, going from the very basic foundational conceptual to the much more technical and to the sector-based areas of ICT4D. The instructional design followed was that they were essentially modular. So each module can stand on its own, but it is interlinked with each other in clusters so that you cover topics all the way from the basics to the most advanced ICT concepts. And it was so designed instructionally so that it can be delivered on a face-to-face mode, as we have done in many of these countries, and on an online distance learning So it was very flexible in terms of delivery. It was updated. 2008 meant by 2011 we found that much of the material was out of date. So it was updated and version 2.0 came out in 2012, and we are now in 2015 in the process of developing version 3, which itself is going to be very transformative and different from the previous two versions. So these are the 11 modules. And the linkage between ICTs and meaningful development, which is the foundational, the basic model that links everything else. ICT for development policy making, processes and governance, e-government applications, trends for government leaders, internet governance, network and information security and privacy, ICT project management, theory and practice, options for funding, ICT for disaster risk, climate change, green growth, and social media for development. Let me stop for a minute right now and tell you who developed these modules. And there was a lot of flack and a lot of questioning and criticism by you. These modules were developed essentially by Asia Pacific scholars and practitioners. This team of 11 people consists of people from the Philippines, from India, one from Fiji, Professor Ang Penghua from the University of NTU, who is a specialist in internet governance. It also developed from the Korean e-applications, e-government applications departments. So these were developed essentially for Asia Pacific by Asia Pacific scholars and practitioners. Not all of us, are rooted in academia, and the way in which these are written are also, they're not written in fancy academic language, they're written in easy to understand language, pitched at what is needed by different target groups. So these are, and essentially what we have done is that many of the original authors have tried to be available to deliver in-country training for many of the modules as and when a country requires it. But it wasn't enough to develop the materials in English, as we found. So the modules which are delivered on Creative Commons are available now in print and in online in 15 languages. They have been translated, what we say, localized to suit local conditions and customized with local case studies wherever possible. So the case studies offered in the print module are generic, very broad, but the case studies that are delivered in an individual country are local case studies that come from there. So they have been, and translation, customization is a very cumbersome, difficult process, but APC ICT and partners have done it in 15 languages as on May 2015. To take a look at how it has been spread across from 2008 to May 2015. Launched in 29 countries, 2 sub-regions. South Pacific as a sub-region and ASEAN also as a sub-region. And in the pipeline are 6 countries where it has not been launched as yet. Launching meaning the first identification of national partners, the first training of trainers workshops from where the partners then take over the training. Some of these are very difficult countries, some of these are very least developed countries, some of them are very advanced. There's a great variation in terms of where it's been delivered. These are some pictures of how it has been delivered. I mean, they're not all action pictures, they're all group photos, but nonetheless, they show the spread. What is its impact across 8-9 years? 29 countries. It's now used in the Middle East, in the Latin America, Africa, and the Caribbean. There are over 10,000 enrollments from 152 countries on the distance learning platform, and 22,000 people have been reached in face-to-face settings. In many cases, like in the Philippines or in India or in even Myanmar, it has been integrated into the National Professional Development or HRD programs for civil servants. Myanmar, the Union Civil Services Board. In the Philippines, the board in charge of training civil servants. The same so in India and same so in several other countries. So it's integrated into the training. It is used by partners in regional and sub-regional regions for their national activities, and it is driven not by APCICT in Incheon, but from the partner institutions in the countries. For example, in Mongolia, their Institute for Civil Service Training has taken it over and then drives the delivery and the training of officials. In terms of policy, the Academy is serving as a platform to discuss ICT issues and we find that alumni are making changes that enhance the success of ICT projects and landscapes. In terms of advisory services for government officials, the APCICT looks at flagship-related services, institutionalization of academy, localization, monitoring and evaluation, and we also have a GCIO. This is a Government Chief Information Officer. This is the key person tasked in the government and in each ministry with using ICTs and for providing information in order to develop a program. APCICT also responds to specific countries. So where has it reached? Africa, an African version of the Academy was launched by the Economic Commission for Africa, and then there are a series of workshops co-organized by the Korean International Cooperation Agency and other institutions for African officials. In Latin America and the Caribbean, supported by the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean Office in training with the Academy. Also, there are other agencies which have been supported, the MSIP and the IPID, establishment of Center for Advanced Studies in Broadband Development in Nicaragua. The Middle East, the Economic Commission, Social Commission for West Asia is launching in 2015 in June, that is next month. But it's the second flagship program I think that is of concern here, because all of you are working in the area of ICT4D development. This is called Turning Today's Youth into Tomorrow's Leaders, Imparting ICT knowledge and empowering students and youth. And this emerged out of discussions taking place at the training workshops where the government officials said, not just us, you need to also train the future generation. Future generation comes out of your tertiary level institutions. The flagship program is this Turning Today's Youth. And how does it work? Well, these are the principles. Within the UN, there is the UN Decade for Education for Sustainable Development, which envisions a path for secure and sustainable future for our society based on education and learning opportunities. And the Global Action Program, which is accepted by all UN agencies for education for sustainable development, 2015 onwards, as a follow-up to the decade for DESD. So how does this work? There are 2 or 3 ways. The first way is imparts key ICT knowledge to students and youth who are leaders of tomorrow through developing what we call the primer series on ICT for youth as a learning resource. Like you have the Academy for the government officials, we have a learning resource for universities. And you will soon see what these modules where they emerge from. APCICT also provides internship and work exposure for students working in the area of ICTs. The ICT exposure for undergraduate and graduate students includes a 3-month internship at APCICT in Incheon, involving students in ICT projects and research. So there's a 3-month internship that is provided, and every year ASEAN sends about 15 students to, ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, sends students to Incheon where they spend 2 months at APCICT learning about ICT. There are advisory services also provided, and the primer customization, the same way that was done for the Academy is also done for the primer. So how is this done? The objective, create a cadre of future leaders with the capacity to use ICTs. Why future leaders? Why young people? because they are digital natives. They are different from my generation. The digital natives are different from my generation. To them, ICTs is very much part of their lives. And those who are in the IT area find very often that they do not have enough knowledge of socioeconomic development, and those who are in social sciences do not understand IT or the jargon of IT. So we worked on advocating an increased coverage of ICTD in undergraduate and graduate programs of the universities of Asia Pacific. To do this, essentially, a comprehensive scan of current coverage of ICTD university programs and majors was done, and we're looking at Asia Pacific, which is the mandated area for the agency, and the Asia Pacific is a microcosm of much of the rest of the developing world. First stage was desk research by those ASEAN students who came to do their internship, a review of existing literature, an online survey of institutions, tertiary institutions in the AP region, strategic consultation with partner institutions, interaction through existing networks, and side discussions at different capacity building workshops. So every time we have a capacity building workshop for 5 days, we will give another half day or a day to discuss the primer. So this, and what did the results of the survey say, or the scan? What were the findings? Almost all institutions offer degree programs and courses related either to ICTs, which are very often related to software development, or we say special skills, or they develop courses in sociology, psychology, communication, and journalism. So there were courses that were being offered by almost all institutions. By and large, they were either, the courses in IT were either related to IT hardware or software, and the social science departments taught courses in development. But there was a small component of the use of ICTs for development in some of the courses, in some of the semesters. And this component was taught largely as part of seminars, guest faculty sessions, and specialist lectures. This is what we found. And in these lectures, in this content, two kinds of content were covered. The first was the acquisition of technical skills, ICT literacy or media literacy, broadcast, new media, entrepreneurship skills in knowledge-based industry, targeting basically special skill. The second kind of content that was provided was largely theoretical, which is what we find in undergraduate and graduate programs in political economy, development, international communications, or with a sector focus. That means in agriculture, education, or health, governance, or development. But nothing that was comprehensive, holistic, or covered the entire area. Okay. And this is the kind of things that we found. We also found when we looked at how is curriculum developed. In some countries, the curriculum is internally driven by faculty members who decide what courses to teach. In some countries, it's mandated by external educational agencies. For instance, in a country like Tajikistan, the Ministry of Education dictates what is the curriculum to be covered in all the subjects. So the university cannot diverge from that until, so it's mandated by an external educational agency. But in all instances, there is a process in each institution in place. It's a rigorous and streamlined process, and any curriculum and course must follow the set process in a given institution before a course can be launched. And I think you will agree with me, in a university there are processes, through committees, reviews, before a program or a course is approved for launch. And these processes were followed across the board. However, from where they came was a little, or where they originated, was different. And there are great differences between Central Asia, South Pacific, ASEAN countries, South Asia, a tremendous range of differences. But these were the common factors. So there are regional variations in how educational policy is made. The structure itself of higher education, some places you have 3 years undergraduate, some places you have 4 years, some places you have 4.5, 5 years. In terms of requirements, prerequisites that students must have, in terms of how these courses are funded, either whether they have to pay for themselves through fees, or they have or different ways in which they're funded. There were different curriculum frameworks, and there was a range of courses offered. But when in the survey we were asked, do you find a need for a project of this kind? And all of them said, yes, we need materials. And this need for materials came out of some very unusual ways. First of all, very few institutions in developing countries can afford to buy $100 textbooks. And even if they buy a $100 textbook for their library, very often in the library after 6 weeks, either the book does not exist there anymore, or it is some ways damaged because students in their enthusiasm have taken away pages. So they were either, the books were not available, they were expensive, they were mishandled over a period of time, or finally what many faculty would say is, these do not take our cultural experience, our historical experience into account. I remember when I was writing the prior introductory Model 1, where a lot of criticism came for me, and I understood it because I'm an academic, from saying that this is not suitable for, in terms of academic quality, for PhD students. I said, yes, I agree, but I am not writing for Cornell or for the London School of Economics. I'm writing when nothing is available, and I need to open a window to the world. So we were really in a situation where we had to write for a specific audience. We couldn't use the jargon that we use in academia. We had to make materials available, and we had to use freely available online resources. And even that sometimes doesn't make sense in a country like Myanmar, where your internet access is so bad. So this was the way in which all of them said we need a project. All of them had different ways of how it would be implemented. All of them suggested these obstacles that I had listed to you that must be addressed, and they provided specific information for us on advocates as to who should be approached in a country. Do you approach the Higher Education Commission? Do you approach the Ministry of Education? Do you approach a specific university? Who do you approach? This was what came out of the survey. So the way to fill the gap was to introduce the content to university students by way of first creating learning materials in a modular, flexible, faculty and student-friendly way. Faculty meaning creation of practical work and exercises that they would encourage their students to do as exemplars. For students, that there was enough information to whet their appetites for looking for more, but it was not overwhelming in terms of rigorous content. From this emerged the primer series on ICT4D for youth. The first issue, which came out in 2012, of which I am the author, and which was a nightmare to write because of all the conditions that were told to me to meet, is a foundational ICT4D text for students of all disciplines, with learning outcomes that they would have basic awareness and knowledge of the potential of ICTs for socio-economic development, and that students can leverage this knowledge in whichever field they want to work. When the first draft was pre-tested on an audience of about 78 plus 15 students, 78 university deans and academic vice presidents and presidents of different universities, and 15 students. The IT students said the same thing. They said, we know the IT, but they didn't know the sociology. The sociology for students found the IT too cumbersome. So we said, how do we roll it out? How do we design it? So it was designed as an input into existing course or a standalone 3 credit, 14-week course with a text. The same rollout approach is for the academy. That should be inclusive, participatory, and should have strong national ownership. The development process of the primer series went through multiple reviews by 92 experts and academics to ensure high quality and relevance. And I can assure you that 92 experts will give 190 suggestions, not all of which can be applied or implemented, some of which were very, very useful in terms of structure and content and all. So it went through multiple reviews. My final version was, I think, on version 10. That is how many. And my colleagues also tell me that they went through the same existential process. We engaged a number of stakeholders to generate feedback. March 11 in Myanmar, there was an awareness lecture. Again, in Philippines, it was in March, it was not June if I'm correct. A consultative meeting for youth in ICTD. September 11 in Tajikistan, November 11 again in Tajikistan. And for the first time in November 11, we used Skype to deliver the content across across the virtual platform. In order to build the capacity of trainers, APC-ICT held a regional workshop on strengthening ICT for development education in October 2011. 37 participants from government and academia. They received not so much training as orientation on how to deliver the content of the primer series and strategies of way forward and rollout. And 16 countries in 2011 indicated an interest. The primer series was launched in Azerbaijan, Baku, in February 2012, and simultaneously on the virtual learning platform, AWA. Rolled out in 14 countries and introduced in 2 sub-regions to the sub-regions being ASEAN and South Pacific. The ICTD teaching capacity is strengthened in 130 plus universities across the region. 22,000 plus students and workshop participants have been reached so far. This is APC-ICT along with its national partners. There are now 5 issues of the primer and more are forthcoming. We keep looking at what should be the next. The fundamental, foundational ICT for development, project management in ICTD, ICT for disaster risk management, ICT for climate change, green growth, and primer 1, which said forthcoming, about to be released, social media for development, harnessing social media. Same instructional design, but in these primer series, we use a lot of cases of young people using creating apps and using ICTD platforms in order to promote it. As you can see, primer 1, 2, 3, and 4 are available in the form of video lectures, presentation slides on the Virtual Academy. There's a community of practice which includes a subject on ICTD, and the ASEAN Cyber University has adopted the primer series. So all these materials are available in terms of distribution in as many modes as possible. It's a map showing as of May 2015 where it has been rolled out. Red indicating where it's already introduced. Some places it's been running for a while. In pipeline are still 6 countries. And there are various reasons why it's harder in some countries to roll out than another. Most of them have to do with both national and international realities. Sometimes, for example, I'm supposed to go to Bhutan in June, but I don't know if I will go given the situation with Nepal, Sikkim and Bhutan in terms of the year. I have no idea whether I will be in Bhutan in June because there's a natural disaster taking place and those countries have been affected. So what is the impact? As on May 2015, really 14 countries, 2 regions, 130 universities, 22,000 students. Primer content adopted in academic institutions. Partner-driven localization. Translation, customization, so far in 6 languages. It serves as a platform for dialogue and collaboration among educational institutions. I'll give you some case studies a little bit later. The primer series, we feel, is filling a gap in the ICTD education in higher institutions of higher learning, and it's encouraging and enhancing students' involvement in ICTD activities. What are the issues we face when we try to implement, or APC-ICT has faced? First of these issues is translation. When for example, in the Central Asian countries, they have had quite a few problems with translating the terminology of what we say in the development discourse, because it was not part of what they were teaching earlier or their educational heritage. So we've had trouble translating some of the materials from English to other languages. I often get a query saying, what is it that you meant when you put this term in so that it can be translated? And all of you know what are the issues of translation from English to other languages. On the bus coming here, one of the colleagues was telling me, so when you translate materials from English to language in Myanmar with so many alphabets and symbols and signals, and in a way in which sentences are structured, it's very, very difficult to translate. Customization, very often in a country, they're not even aware of an ICT4D project going on. So customization in terms of local case studies is very difficult. And then when you say, please write up the case study, we promote it, writing it up is even more difficult because access to information, and putting it together is a bit of a problem. So case studies, finally customizing the materials to local contexts. And I can assure you, customizing something for the Philippines and customizing something for Sri Lanka or customizing something for Myanmar are three different experiences. Three different things. So customization, what kind of project work do you give to students? What kind of engaged or involved learning do students engage in? What kind of advocacy is necessary for partnerships? These are some of the implementation issues. So let me give you some cases where it's successful. In the Philippines, the Commission on Higher Education has mandated that as a pilot, 19 universities will teach a course in ICT for development. But Philippines has a long experience in using communication technologies for development. It goes back to the 1970s and 80s. And so they have been mandated. In Indonesia, the University of Indonesia, Department of Computer Science, has piloted the program through the university so that all undergraduate students, as part of one of their prerequisite foundational courses in their 4-year course, do a course on ICT4D. So all their universities, undergraduate students, have 1 semester of ICT4D. In India, at the University of Hyderabad, they have taken content out of the primers. For example, they've taken case studies out of the social media and development module. They have taken case studies out of the ICT project implementation. They have taken concepts out of primer 1 and introduced them already into development courses that they have been teaching. So the bits and pieces that are taken out. Practical exercises that they can give to students as assignments. These have been done. And the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore, is this year launching a program called the MS in Digital Society, which includes the primer series as part of their offerings. In Nepal, in the Kathmandu University, students are mandated to spend 2 weeks in a remote village of Nangi. It's no longer remote. It's up near in the Annapurna range, not too far from where the earthquake struck. And they spend 2 weeks in their course working with the village leaders in what is a very innovative project called Nangi Village Project or Himanchal.net, so that they do this through field work. In Tajikistan, they have incorporated the content into university courses in 3 universities: Kulam State University, the Tajikistan University of Technology, and the Institute of Economics and Entrepreneurship Development. So there are different ways in which they have. I've just given 3 or 4 exemplars of 3 or 4 different cases, but there are many others. Cambodia is launching a master's course, some other institutions launching something else. What are the key ingredients we think of success? Partnerships with all stakeholders, institutional supports, local champions. So you find one senior professor in your university with the kind of influence that is needed to pilot a program through. The quality of materials, localization, customization, local case studies, and a training of master trainers. The training of master trainers is not so much to teach them something, but to align a particular perspective with those of the authors in terms of how to incorporate the content. APC ICT has launched a new initiative called Wi-Fi, which stands for Women and ICT Frontier Initiative. The objective of this is highlighted in the framework for the Sustainable Development Goals, that economic growth must be inclusive, addressing vulnerable populations, including women, must be specifically addressed, where entrepreneurs will play a role, and therefore it's ICTs for sustainable development. As we shift from MDGs to SDGs, which have not been finalized yet, but hopefully by September, October, they will become, after the General Assembly goes through that, they will become much more of a policy for all institutions to follow. The Wi-Fi program is based on the fact that there is a lack of structured interventions for women entrepreneurs for using ICTs, and there are very few efforts to support women entrepreneurs, and this is the deck. And unless women entrepreneurs are included, if they continue to be excluded, they will not benefit from what is offered by ICTs. Research and knowledge, there are case study series, knowledge sharing series, briefing notes and briefing on ICT trends. There's a constant materials being developed. Everything is available on the APC ICT website, and they're all free for use. Everything is freely available to use. The only thing we say is acknowledge our contribution. That's all. Use the materials, acknowledge our contribution. As I mentioned earlier, the AVA, which is the Virtual Academy, where you will find all the materials. The Collaborative Hub, which is an e-library with resources. And the Academy Partners Resource Center, where we have materials from different partners located. There's multilateral cooperation mechanism, promote dialogue, knowledge sharing, mutual cooperation through regular regional fora for ICT, regional dialogue for annual meetings, partner meetings, and regional fora on ICT human capacity development, which answers the question, where are we going, and what will it take to fill the gap? Ways forward. What is it that the APCIC can share with you? What is it that you can do? Use the private series, use its content, use it as you see appropriate. Contribute themes for future development. And this is very important because we don't know, very often, we don't know what are the themes on which APCIC should now concentrate. There are always funding crunches, so we concentrate on women, should we concentrate on disaster, should we concentrate on social media, should we concentrate on strategy and planning, should we concentrate on funding, what is it, what are the themes, and where are the resource authors who can produce the materials. It isn't enough to identify a theme. We also need authors from what we call the South in order for us to be able to develop further. So what is it that we need to do in the future, and where are the resources? You could contribute by identifying and sending case studies, which can be included in updated versions of the module with new credit to you, or uploaded onto the EcoHub of the APCIC. Help your local universities to localize their customers, and any other form of contribution. More specifically, and this is what Dr. Reed, director, and I had a discussion on Tuesday morning, a lengthy discussion. And what is it? She is a professor of management, former professor of management at Georgia Tech, and I am a former professor from Osmania University. And we discussed it at length. What is it that PhD students and students already engaged with ICT for development research can contribute? There are some questions to answer the question. We need help, because unless we have solid research background, either the quality of the materials will improve or the advocacy that we're trying to do. And as I told you right up front, the percentage of failure is far too high for us to be complacent. Picking answers to the question as to why do so few programs and projects in ICT succeed despite these massive investments? What's happening? We know from anecdotal evidence, we know from what the officials tell us, but what's going right and what's going wrong? And what are the key ingredients that must be extrapolated from research to identify causes of success and failure? Let me give you an example. If you have a project that is operating at a micro level in a village or in a cluster of villages, and it is working very well there, okay? Can you just pick this project up and replicate it on a national level in your country? Will it work? Something that is working exceptionally well at a micro level may not work at a national level simply because the ingredients that go into it are different. So, but then there must be something in this micro level project, findings that we can extrapolate that we can apply at a national level. Similarly, there are national, let's say, EGOP initiatives. The national initiative may be succeeding very well, but the national initiative, when localized to a village or a provincial setting, doesn't work. Is it just a question of localization, customization, or are we missing something? So we have these, contradictory scenarios, and we do not know what are the key ingredients that must be extrapolated. We do not know how to design them. How do you take a project from one place and apply it in another with a reasonable chance of success? Then the question that I ask is, how can a research work contributing to the building of theory in ICT4D? I'm not talking about the constructivist philosophy within ICT for education. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, what is it, where is your research work to the building of theory? This is a new field. It's hardly 15 years old. Hardly. Because in most cases, the technology in developing countries did not really appear till 2009, 2010. It's a very young field. Yes, we have borrowed from all sciences. We have borrowed from social science, we borrowed from IT, we borrowed from education, we borrowed from philosophy, we borrowed from public administration, we borrowed from academia. But where is the development of our own theory? Where are we going? And much of your research work could contribute in small bits and pieces to the building of theory for ICT4D. Because I think you will all agree with me that today's ICTs are transformationally different from what we call the legacy media of yesterday. When I shifted from television into computer-based learning or into multimedia, I found that the grammar of the media itself was different. Therefore, the grammar itself is different, and there's a transformational difference. Then what is the research input? What is it that project implementers need to know? This is, and in a developing country, research which does not have a practical implication for improving society is of no value. Just as basic research, which is all well and good in terms of our future careers, has no value when it comes to implementing on the ground. It has to have practical application in a society. That is why ICT research is important, and we need to provide research inputs that help us to improve policy, improve outcomes, improve understanding, and improve theory building. Coming back to APCICT, throughout this presentation, now which has gone on too long, I think, we have been looking at partnerships. APCICT itself is a very small agency of 4 technical people and 8 to 10 external consultants, resources. So it's a very small agency compared to large agencies like the Economic Commissions. The only way that it could function was to, and develop all what it has done in 8 to 9 years, was to work through partnerships with government agencies, other UN bodies, civil society organizations, with host government agencies, with regional organizations, private sector, and academic and research institutes. So it is done in a partnership. It's a partnership-based agency, providing technical assistance as and where needed. So there is no partner, there is no ICT in some sense. The belief basically is that ICTs transform our hope into reality because they are simply, it's a tool. But when the tool works for people, and when people know how to use it, ICT then transforms this hope into reality. That is our signature tune, and we're trying to develop human capacity to build it together. This is what the organization has been doing, and sums up. And let me give you a little brief about my co-authors. As I said, I myself a practitioner, teacher, and researcher in ICT for development. But mine is a very broad perspective, and I come from grassroots up. I don't go from technology down. Technology to me is immaterial because it changes. The appropriate technology for the appropriate time, but the grassroots are. The author of the module on policy, Dr. Emmanuel Laliana from the Philippines, was a political scientist who was also part of the Philippine Telecommunications Commission for developing Filipinos ICT for development policy. The author of Module 3 was one of the key people framing Korea's e-government policy and applications. The author of Module 4 on ICT trends is Asia Pacific chapter head for the Internet Society. Author of Module 5, Professor Anpeng Ba from NTU, from the School of Communication here, is an internationally known expert on cyber law and internet governance. Module 6 is on security, information security. The authors are from Korea in Information Security Agency. Module number 7, which is on project management, come from the Philippines, where they have been engaged in actually implementing ICTD projects. Module number 8 is funding options for ICTD from a person who has worked with, he's a Canadian, but he has worked with international agencies and he brings to the table his knowledge of how to develop public-private partnerships, how to source funding, and because that is very important for ICTD projects. Module number 9 is from the Asia Pacific Disaster Center in Bangkok. Has to do with module number 10 is also from the Asia Pacific Disaster Center in Bangkok, where they are monitoring and researching and developing materials on disaster mitigation and climate change. And module number 11 is again Dr. Emmanuel Laliana from the Philippines. This is where we are. And all of these people have 20, 25 years at least of background, grounded very much in the field. None of us is really a scholar, some of us teach, some of us do research, but this is where we are grounded. And we invite you to participate with APC ICT. You can go up to our website. I was supposed to bring an assignment sheet and I got late this morning, so I didn't bring it in. But if you give me your card or a sheet of paper, give me your details, I will pass them on to APC ICT, because we are looking for different things. We're looking for people who can help us write. We're looking for resource authors as we try to expand the pool of people available. The same people cannot write different perspectives of it. We're looking for researchers. We're looking for local champions who will help us in a sense that once we deliver a master trainers, we take it over from there and who can develop materials in their own country settings on their own. So we're looking for a range of skills, and we look forward actually to working with all of you in developing APC-ICT's work further. The agency is 9 years old, coming into 10 years next year. Its mandate has not changed, and we still have to, we have a long way to go, provided we all work together. So thank you very much, and if there are any questions,